but some interesting stuff coming out about that. I don't think that has been fully understood yet, and maybe it never will be fully understood. You know, Pat George grabbed me before the show and had a few things to share with me, which I thought were very interesting, and we'll at least mention them. But just to say, you know, this condo was known to have structural issues. It was reviewed by some structural engineers about 3 years ago, and they actually wrote a report up, and they said that there was abundant cracking and spalling, which is where the concrete actually breaks off of itself, and you could see the sort of inner parts of the concrete start to be revealed. So there was abundant cracking and spalling of varying degrees observed in the concrete columns, beams, and walls. Now, what they really saw in the parking garage was that some of the steel rebar had been exposed, was rusting, which obviously that steel rebar does. If you've ever been on a construction site, you've seen it sitting there rusting. Now put it next to the ocean, expose it to salt air, and imagine what happens. So the structure of this condominium that was built many decades ago really had some issues. They were known about. Apparently nobody was doing anything about it. They also had detected some sinking. Now, that, though, was so small, it's hard to believe that that alone could have caused the collapse that we saw on the video because, frankly, it looked like a controlled demolition. I don't think there's any reason to believe that it was a controlled demolition, but it had that look. The building just sort of, you know, almost evaporated and fell down into its footprint. So it was obviously a serious structural issue that occurred. And, Pat, I think either you might be even pulling up the video there, but I saw some really great video of it, and it's a very sad situation.
Yeah, it kind of started in the center.
Yeah, well, which you would expect, you know. But anyway, I really don't think there's any reason to even speculate that it was anything other than a collapse from forces, although there is some interesting data on some stuff that occurred a little bit further north off the east coast of Florida. And that is the Navy set off a giant bomb that created shockwaves, even created a small earthquake on the seismographs. And it was shortly thereafter, because that occurred last week, it was shortly thereafter that building did collapse. So did that shockwave kind of push things over the edge.
Where did that shockwave take place?
I think it was off the coast of Jacksonville.
Daytona, about 130 miles out.
Okay. About how many miles out?
130 out.
Okay, 130 miles out. They blew up a big bomb next to a Navy ship to kind of test and see what would occur to the ship. It wasn't right next to it, but it was fairly close, and they wanted to test things out. So could that have, you know, sort of pushed it over the edge? It's really hard to know. At the end of the day, it's a huge tragedy. You know, you've got about 150 people still missing. They got, at least last I saw, 9 confirmed dead, and it's a huge tragedy. We'll tell you a little more.
Back on the Morgan Streetman Show, we are going to get a chance to go out there, but we're finishing up our discussion about the tragedy that has taken place and continues, the ongoing tragedy in South Florida with that collapsed building. I heard the story about the family whose grandmother is missing, and yet for some reason they've gotten 16 phone calls from her landline. Have you heard about that?
No, I did not hear that.
And no one can figure out why that's happening.
Well, I did hear the story about the lady who was on her balcony on her cell phone when it collapsed. She was in one of the units, and literally the person on the line said that she said, "Wait, the parking garage is collapsing," and then, "Oh, the building is really shaking." Then she screamed, and the line went dead.
She was talking to her husband.
Okay. Yeah, well, so you got a little more of the details, and you had some interesting details, Pat.
Yeah, apparently when the surveyor came and did everything, the inspectors showed the damage and everything, and then they were going to have a homeowners association meeting. They brought in a city official that was pretty much well-versed in those buildings, and as far as if it was going to be still, you know, a good building to stay, and he said it was fine. Everything he checked out with the surveyor, and everything was going to be fine. And, well, one of the problems they had was that, depending on the footage, it was $80,000 to $130,000 each unit had to pay.
Yeah, that engineering report determined there were some fixes that needed to be done to it. The city people said, no, it's fine, but the structural engineers said, there's some fixes, but we're going to need to charge everybody between $80,000 and $130,000.
And now that city official doesn't remember going to that meeting or ever sending emails or talking about that.
Yeah. And soon, hopefully, he'll be moving away, right? He's going to move away as quickly as possible,
like all eyes
I would
are
imagine.
On him right now.
Yeah, you would not want to be him. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.